Hey everyone, today I'm talking to Vukasin Vukosavljevic. He is the CMO at HeyReach and former head of growth at Lemlist. Vukasin, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing at HeyReach.
Hey man, thanks for the invite. I really appreciate it. Happy to be here. And yeah, like I'm a passionate marketer, at least I think so. And I'm in charge nowadays with creating marketing and growth chaos at HeyReach, but the good kind of chaos. And yeah, I started as a copywriter 10 or 11 years ago. Who's counting? Getting old, can't stop it. And nowadays, like doing some fun marketing and growth stuff, I guess.
That's awesome. So that background in copywriting, you feel like that is that you're still kind of relying or falling back on that background? Do you think that is an advantage for marketers?
Yeah, it's definitely an advantage because a lot of stuff in inbound relies on, I guess,
Yep.
content creation on one hand and distribution on the other. So
Yep.
knowing those two is obviously good for me. But even if I started as an engineer, I guess I would be saying the same thing for the engineering stuff. So any stuff you have, I think it's beneficial, and knowing how to play it depending on where you're working and what's the ecosystem about, but also leveraging and kind of leveling up some other stuff as well. So yeah, that's my answer. Politically correct.
I love it. Like taking a broad view. First off, I kind of want to talk about this post that you just put on LinkedIn about your SEO conversation with Irene,
Yep.
a former competitor. I happened to see that, and I was just like, oh, this is awesome. I love that you have this sort of collaborative spirit. You think about like, hey, let's put ego aside. And I'm just curious what happened. In your words, she crushed you with SEO.
Yeah.
So that's really empowering to see you reach out and be like, hey, I want to learn from you. So tell me more about that conversation. What did you guys talk about? What were your learnings?
Yeah, so I was curious really because SEO for HeyReach wasn't really the biggest channel. Of course, like we improved it over the years, but nowhere near close what Irina was doing with Hunter. And I had most of the competitors I liked even today. There are occasional ones I kind of dislike, and they probably dislike me, which is fine. But Irina wasn't the villain, definitely. And I was just curious because like I saw the nature of the tool and how she kind of leveled it up on different fronts, whether it was like purely organic non-branded traffic, lead magnets on the other hand. Like there's a bunch of stuff I was curious, but most of all I was curious about her content operations structure, team, full-timers, part-timers,
Hmm.
volume of content. Everything was a little bit different, product placement type of stuff. And so I just came prepared with questions, and most of the conversations were around working with team, scaling volume with limited resources, I guess, like how she did it, and how does she do content briefs, keyword mapping, optimization, making sure that especially part-time writers, freelance writers understand the ICP, the product placement, the tool.
Hmm.
How the hell do you scale that stuff? And she was generous enough to share a bunch of useful stuff, obviously respecting some NDAs that we had to respect. But yeah, that was the conversation, and the value was for 1 hour and extra minutes, like was insane.
That's amazing, and it's great to see like from both of you that you're just having this open conversation. So what did you, if anything, what did you change at HeyReach coming out of that, or what are you going to? Because I know it's like, probably is recent.
Yeah, that was I think it was maybe 2 years ago, maybe less. Like I don't remember precisely, but back then I was having my agency, solopreneur agency, where I kind of help B2B SaaS businesses with different channels. And so the thing that I changed, including stuff for HeyReach as well, is how I deliver these briefs to freelancers, making sure to kind of limit the back and forth. And so
Hmm.
if you think about it, the brief is almost as long as the article. So it's like
Yeah.
you get the brief from 8 to 12 pages telling you precisely these are the pain points of the agency or the sales team or the GTM operator, whoever is the user. This is how we can solve that. This is the product placement I want you to do. This is the section. This is what this is about. This is the other section. This is the following section. These are the resources you can use. There are some resources obviously you can use over and over again, and there are some stuff that you can update. And so depending on if you delegate this brief to a let's say a junior writer who has zero experience with the outbound space, there are some things you gotta include in that brief. Or if you're going to a senior that has some experience, then it's kind of like a different type of a gig. But obviously the goal is eliminate a lot of back and forth, so you don't have to do a lot of feedback iterations and kind of, okay, this is off the point, this is need to be improved, etc., etc. You want to limit this with this brief. And so this is the thing that I was curious mostly about. And then this is what I kind of leveled up a lot. And I can tell, but by the feedback from freelancers, that it was on point. And then there were some hacks around, picking the keywords, picking the battles, how you kind of compete with that type of stuff. If you things like some dumb stuff, like even if you, let's say your domain authority is really low, how to maximize your backlink building skills and operations in a short period of time, so you can get that domain authority to go to 40, 50 plus, and then it's kind of easier to rank, which content buckets to prioritize, stuff like that, I guess.
So just concretely, when you think about briefs now, can you give an example of something that maybe you used to do in your briefs and you don't do now, or you do differently, or you've added on to the briefs?
Yeah, my briefs were definitely shorter. And so that kind of unlocked a lot of second, third, fourth draft with writers. So I thought, like, I want to work with writers who have like this work ethic that they're gonna go a little bit of an extra mile. And sometimes you get writers, but usually you don't. And so what I liked about Irina's approach, and I have added some of the stuff, from my own experience as well, is even if I have a writer who has no clue what outbound is or what integration with Clay does, if I send the right resources and the right ICP intelligence, so that they can leverage, that's the thing that I changed. I'm a nerd, but I became like a nerd squared after talking. So I kind of optimize all of these resources that I have. I gave them to writers. I had some internal like library of information and things like that. And so this became like, from, let's say, upper intermediate to advanced. That was the concrete thing I changed.
And so at HeyReach, you're working largely with freelance writers. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes. So I have like a full-time content lead in my team. Shout out to Boyana. And she has, I think, 10, 20, 30 writers, depending on, the mix and the volume that she wants to hit on a monthly basis, I guess.
What is that volume that you're going for, kind of roughly speaking, at the moment?
Right now, I think it's between 6 and 10 articles, depending on what we need. And take into consideration that our non-branded traffic is not our strongest asset at the moment, for HeyReach in particular. Most of our stuff acquisition and that type of stuff comes from word of mouth, branding initiatives, direct traffic, branded traffic, etc., etc. And so now we have some things coming from SEO, but we want to level that up. Right now, the volume is between 6 and 10 due to some other stuff that Boyana needs to take care of. But hopefully we can get this between, I guess, like around 15 sometime in the future, but let's see.
Per month?
Articles per month, yes.
Per month, yeah, okay. So yeah, 6 to 10 per month right now, and hoping to get to 15 per month. Got it. And
yeah, and that excludes like updating and optimization of existing articles.
Yeah. And so are you considering pillar pages or product pages as sort of part of your content calendar overall, or are you really focused on, I guess, blog articles?
Good question. So now that number excludes that, but that's type of stuff that Boyana and the content team is also included in. So I'm not including this in this number in particular.
Okay, and then what we talked to a lot of people about is the influence of AI. I know you have a point of view on this, but it's interesting to hear so far you haven't mentioned it. So it sounds like, you're developing these briefs, you're giving them to actual human writers, and those writers, it sounds like a pretty sizable network of writers. Those writers are human writers that are producing that content. Is AI coming into the picture at all at any point in your process?
Yes, but not for writing. I believe AI is a sparring partner, especially if we're talking middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel stuff. I think there's a lot of especially with HeyReach brand, there's like a lot of authenticity and authentic stories, and also making users a part of it. So there's like a lot of stuff that we're doing on that front. And so I don't feel like AI can create that type of stuff. Sure, they can create like a how-to tactical guide, especially with good prompts. If you know what you're doing, they can do like a hell of a good stuff with top of the funnel. I've seen this with some of the clients when I was like doing the agency stuff, and I've seen like what type of insane traffic they can bring. But if we're talking about middle of the funnel, especially bottom of the funnel, I believe, you know, AI is like Robin to your Batman in a way.
There's obviously a bunch of AI tools out there that you know kind of say or imply that they'll do the writing for you. I'm with you on this. You know, I
Yeah.
think authenticity is oftentimes just not there, and you just get this sort of generic stuff that comes out of it. You know, I think there's a lot of refinement you can do by feeding it the right prompts and feeding it a lot of context.
Yeah.
So your content team, your content lead, is the one writing the briefs, or like what does the workflow look like in terms of actually writing the briefs and then handing that off?
Yes. So Boana is in charge of writing the briefs, but depending on the article, she might need somebody from the team to kind of help. And
Got it.
so this goes from Batman and Robin conversation potentially to kind of like an Avenger conversation. So for example, say that we recently like released like integration with Make, which is like let's call it like a feature that our users, or like decent percentage of our user base, really wanted. And so Buena might know some interesting make scenarios in, let's say, categories A and B, but maybe categories C and D, she needs somebody from the sales team or from the accounts team to kind of deliver some stuff. And they might hop on a call, she might record it. They might send a Loom video, they might send access to demo calls, like whatever the case may be, depending on the topic itself. And then, you know, Buena goes to these notions, and then she transforms kind of in her brief. I did the same thing before she joined, and then this kind of becomes like a, let's say, a cross-departmental effort, but ultimately she remains in charge of
Yep.
dissecting this information and then including or repurposing it for different freelancers.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What's your typical turnaround for an article, kind of start to finish?
It's a good question. So I don't know for Buena today, but I would say if you send the brief, let's say Monday, I would expect draft to be done, let's say Thursday, Friday, or Monday, and then publish it in between 5 or 10 days, depending on the topic, the complexity, and the freelancer availability. Obviously, I don't want to burn
Hmm.
freelancers in the process. I think Buena doesn't want to do that either. But you know, it depends, I guess, on the complexity of the topic and availability of the freelancer. And you know, complexity of the topic is mostly what dictates the tempo
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, and that makes sense. Are your articles varying in length a lot, or you kind of try to keep them all around the same length?
I'm a kind of guy who doesn't really care about the length. I think what you care about is the pricing itself. Like if you're charging, for example, if your freelancers are charging you per word, then you want to kind of take it into consideration. But let's say you can, my policy is the article needs to be actionable,
Hmm.
and it needs to feel like a sales ad without feeling like a sales ad, if that makes sense. And we can probably pick that up on like a little bit later. But if you can do this and create like 10,000 words, I'm okay with it if it's like super actionable and there's like
Hmm.
no repetition. Repetition rate is really low. Usually it's between 3K, 4K length.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I mean that is pretty sizable. So that's pretty that's awesome that you guys are able to like crank out that much content in such a relatively short time frame. That's yeah, kudos to you.
Thanks. But you know, it took a while. Like you have to kind of think about it. Like when I was doing it, that's one thing. Then Buena came, there was some
Yeah.
sort of onboarding and things like that.
Yeah.
And you know, depending on, let's say that May, she can, for example, crank higher level than April, usually because in April, maybe she had like another project to do. And so you kind of try to plan things in advance. And so Buena can, hey, like in June, I have this. I need a bigger budget because I want to bring this freelancer, or
Hmm.
I want to do this because like what I appreciate from her And probably what she appreciates from her writers is like a heads up and kind of
Yeah.
like planning and
Yeah.
maybe like a structured anarchy in a way.
It sounds to me, based on the way you're speaking about it, it sounds more like structure than to anarchy, to me.
Yeah, but it's like it's in between. We're still like
Mm.
early stage. There's just like thousands of things going and thousands of
Yeah.
problems to solve, and that go beyond just pure SEO. There's like a gazillion of other channels, but it's important to kind of decentralize things and let people lead their stuff. But on the flip side, kind of take the best out of both. If now we can use like Star Wars analogy, like both from the good, like the good guys and the bad guys, so the light force and the dark force.
I want to talk a bit about measuring success. What are your main measures, your metrics that you're looking at when it comes to success in general, but I guess also more specifically to content success?
So I guess like it depends on the channel, but if you break down the HeyReach model, so you have revenue as a goal, and then how like that revenue can come from new users, that revenue can come from existing users. Usually we're talking about paid users as a metric, and we're talking free trial signups as a metric, and you have like conversion rate that kind of connects the both. And so if we're talking about creating content, that usually I like to create content that helps bring new users, but at the same time helps existing users win. And so if you can create one content piece that kind of does both, that's great. But you might have some stuff like we mentioned make.
Mm-hmm.
And so now we're talking about, okay, how can we help people who might not have heard about HeyReach, but have heard about make come in, and vice versa. And so that can be a metric. Another metric can be, hey, how many, if we're talking about productivity metrics, what's the number of articles that we want to do? What's the number of optimizations, like updating existing articles that we want to do? And what's the speed of like how fast can the writer deliver the article? How fast can we ship it? And so that's how you kind of connect it. The revenue metric, the business metric, which is this article, or whatever, if it's not an article, if it's something else, like what kind of an audience it can bring, what's the conversion rate from visitors, readers to free trial signups or
Mm-hmm.
something else. And then from the free trial, we're talking about, okay, activation, like sending the first campaign, converting to a paid user, and like putting your credit card, obviously. That's kind of like the story told fast.
Yeah. And is there a space or a place in that journey for kind of building an owned audience, like newsletter subscriptions or anything
Yeah.
like that?
Yeah. Our newsletter is one of the most important channels for sure. LinkedIn is another massive thing.
Yeah.
We have a lot of organic ambassadors. We recently launched like a creator program. There's like a bunch of stuff in there. And then if you want to go into the nitty-gritty details, then we're talking about like which product placement or which link in the article is bringing the best, and what can you learn for the next article and things like that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So are you, when you're writing an article, when your team is writing an article, are they thinking about um, a particular outcome that may not be that revenue outcome or that paid user outcome? Are there certain articles, like do you kind of differentiate, distinguish between top, middle, bottom of funnel, I suppose, in your writing, and then say like, okay, well, let's say we have a middle of the funnel article that's trying to drive free signups. We have a more top of funnel article that is trying to drive newsletter subscriptions, etc.
So we don't do like top of the funnel stuff at all, like especially now. And consider this, that in SEO we're like right now we're size of a mouse in terms of like how much are we getting from non-branded. But I can see kind of things working. So the first thing that we did is what I call this like the money bucket, or the bottom of the funnel bucket. And so one of the things that we did is we created a lot of these reviews. And so the way I think about it is there's like this industry, but a lot of industries in general are very, very competitive. And so the outbound space is insanely competitive. And there's like a lot of people right now, a lot of people know about HeyReach, our presence in the US, our presence in the Europe, our presence in the Eastern markets. Like it's really good. But back in the day and even nowadays, there are some folks who want to understand, depending on the ICP that we're talking about, for example, how HeyReach ranks versus another article. And especially back in the day when I started working as a consultant prior to becoming a CMO of HeyReach, it was okay. There's like tools that are our competitors for agencies, and there are tools that are our competitors for sales teams or growth teams. And so let's say that instead of doing a article about Dripify alternatives or expand the alternatives, shout out to our competitors, we do something that's like Dripify review or expand the review or whatever. And so we kind of take the most powerful keyword in that sense, which is like a review, which a lot of people do. And we try to be like not selling our tool in it and make a very, very objective review of our competitor, like give them their flowers for what they're good at, send leads that are not ideal HeyReach leads to our competitors, but for the leads that are ideal for HeyReach and for stuff that HeyReach can do maybe better than our competitor, how can we position that? And so, long story short, we take Dripify review as a keyword, but as a primary keyword, but we also take secondary keywords, Dripify pricing, Dripify alternatives, Dripify stuff, and position our strong, like our advantages of HeyReach in that article. And so we can rank this article very, very fast on a first page, on the first page of Google in the top 3 or 4 or 5 results. And we can then do this and replicate it for like other competitors, and then do this index page of HeyReach comparisons and kind of rank on this keyword and offer like a lot of reviews. So there's like not a lot of traffic in there, but there's like a decent amount of traffic that's in the purchase zone, in the buying behavior. And so that's like one thing you can do relatively fast. And then the second thing in the middle of the funnel, you can do like, okay, let's do actionable articles. Let's do pain points that our tool solves, which is not top of the funnel, middle of the funnel. And quite honestly, I hate top of the funnel. I hate it. There's not a value in it. It's like if we're talking about entertainment, that's one thing. But if we're talking about conversions, I don't see like a lot of conversions coming.
Yep.
Depending on the, I guess, industry, there are maybe some guys like Grammarly, for instance, like an example that made top of the funnel work brilliantly. But yeah, that's kind of like my answer there. If it kind of until they were actionable value.
Yes, no, I love it. That's fantastic. So what are your thoughts on current trends? Like what are some of the things that you're watching and where you're going, hey, like, okay, we're gonna probably go in that direction. We're not doing it yet, but maybe we're starting to do it.
In terms of SEO?
Well, in more in general, like in terms of any growth channels that you're looking at where you're sort of like, this is my next big thing.
Okay. So if it's like in general, like my kind of priority is fueling word of mouth channels. So for example, I recently shared a post about this initiative about like outbound outliers, which effectively are like playbooks our users use. So we put users in a spotlight, and it's like HeyReach is just a part of the story. And so this is one initiative that kind of fuels our word of mouth. And then how can we scale these channels and how can we open existing channels? It's like not essentially like a trend, but it's more like something that really works. And in terms of trends, I'm a big fan of AI, but again, as Jarvis to my Iron Man to kind of keep this conversation kind of going. And so I'm a big fan of kind of connecting these things to kind of work for me and for my team and for my users and helping them win. And so essentially, kind of, if we're bringing a lot of free trial signups from different channels, like how many are qualified? And AI can help me do this relatively fast.
Yep.
So that type of stuff. I'm really, really like a huge fan of that trend. And I'm a huge fan of giving like a facelift to some old stuff and kind of making it work today. So for example, swag. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's some good stuff that we can do with swag these days. Or another trend that's kind of like, okay, LinkedIn. Like I hate selfies. I hate them. Like I loathe them so much. But images are great. Can we do cool infographics? Can we do cool videos that are not top of the funnel, that are middle of the funnel for our audience? Kind of make the trend make the trend work, but on our terms instead of just doing like selfies can be cool if they're contextual, don't get me wrong. But if they are like me on a beach and delivering like a motivational quote, I don't want to do that. But if it's like a something other than that, like Team Solo recently shared like a floating device in a pool kind of selfie in a contextual text, that's good. So kind of that's stuff, and that's the way I kind of approach trends.
Yeah, I love it. Very pragmatic. Yeah, I love your pragmatism and just like
Thank
trying
you.
to make things actionable. That's really good. So just to round this out, do you have some recommendations in terms of authors, gurus, movements that you are following that you would recommend other people to check out?
So my personal favorites. So we mentioned Team Solo. I like Rand Fishkin a lot. Like he's like a he influenced me on so many levels, especially early in the career. I like DeAndre Escobar, for instance. I like Sara Latanazio, if I don't butcher her surname again. So those are kind of people I like to follow. But in essence, what you mentioned, that post from today with Irina, like I think maybe the best advice I can give you is, or maybe the best way I can respond to this question is, just have a personal advisory board. Have a guys you can call, or guys you can message, or guys you can message for the first time that are doing something interesting in your industry as a user of your tool, as a future user of a tool in an industry that doesn't have any, that has a correlation with you, but it's not 100% connected with you. And then just pick their brain. And then when you like pay for their time or do it like as a networking call with different people, and there's like a famous people, not so famous people that can bring you value. And then when they bring you value, remember that, because there will be people asking for your time, and then you can repay them back. But yeah, to give some names: Tim Solar and Fishkin, DeAndre Escobar, Trish, Sara Latanazio, Maya Voice, an interesting growth asset, Tyler, founder of Beehive. I like him. I like him a lot, the way that he talks. And yeah, that's my answer.
Awesome. That is a ton of people. So yeah, I think that's going to be super valuable. Well, Vuk, thank you so much for joining us here today, and thanks for coming on. What is the best way for folks to get in touch with you if they have any questions for you, if they would like to reach out to you?
LinkedIn DM is the safest choice. Vuk@heyreach.io. If you want to go email, that's probably the best bet. But thank you for the invite, and thank you for having me here. Obviously, I really appreciate it.
Amazing. Thanks for coming on. Loved having you on the show.